Today we're discussing the halachic importance of serving as the Sandek and the shaila of whether one is allowed to serve as a Sandek multiple times in his lifetime and for multiple times for one family. Before we begin, as always, the should not be relied upon for halachic psak, and a rav should be consulted. The Sandek is the term that is given for the person during the circumcision who holds the baby on his lap while the circumcision is being performed. And the Maril in Hilchos Mila writes an unbelievable halacha. He says, "Mari segel kishanasu balbris." When the Mari segel served as a Sandek, when he would hold the baby on his lap, first of all, he would go to the mikveh beforehand in order to properly prepare himself for this important mitzvah. He would go to the mikveh in order to make sure that he was tahar. V'amar, and he said, "Gadol mitzvahs balbris, mitzvahs hamayel, b'bnei sharag b'lav nidmu l'mizbeach kilu maktir k'tayrus l'shemayim." And he said that it's a bigger mitzvah to serve as a Sandek than to serve as the moel, as the one who's performing the circumcision. He said, because when you're holding the baby, your legs have the status of the mizbeach, the great altar in the Beis HaMikdash, and when you're holding the baby, it's as if you're maktir ketayres l'shemayim. It's as if you're bringing incense to Shemayim, one of the great avodos that was done in the Beis HaMikdash. And continues the Maril, also tam kasav Rabbeinu Peretz, and based on this ruling, Rabbeinu Peretz said, "Mash'ein koflum lases ban of lebal bris echad pamayim v'shalish rak l'chol ben boirer bal bris echad." The Rabbeinu Peretz says, based on this teaching, the custom has become not to let one person serve as a Sandek twice for one family. Mishum de'itmar perakama diyuma, because the Gemara in Yuman says, "Kayin shehikta ketaris pamachas leishina oid la'olam." The Gemara says in Yuma that all the Kohanim wanted to serve to bring the Ketores. It was a very big avodah in the Beis HaMikdash, and the Gemara says that they wouldn't allow someone to do it twice in his lifetime. Once you did it once, that was it. You were zocha and you had your turn. So it says Rabbeinu Peretz, based on this concept that being the Sandek is as if you're bringing the Ketores, therefore the custom has become that if one person becomes a Sandek for one family member, he shouldn't be a Sandek for a second family member. Meaning, if you have a grandfather who's Sandek for his grandson, and then he has another grandson from the same family, he shouldn't be Sandek a second time. Because the same way in the Beis HaMikdash they wouldn't let the Kohen bring the Ketores twice, so to this person should not perform Sandekoyis, as they say, should not be the Sandek for two times for one family. This halacha is brought down by the Ramah in Yeridei Siman Reish Samach Hey Sif Yud Aleph. It's a very important to fulfill this mitzvah being a Sandek, and he continues that it's as if you bring Ketores, and therefore the custom has become not to give two children from one family to one person to be the Sandek. Okay. Now this opinion of the Ramah, so this is, by the way, this is the source to not be the Sandek twice for one family. Meaning, if you have a person named Shmuel who has two sons, those two sons should not use the same Sandek. That's the halach, based on this Ramah. The problem with this Ramah is there are numerous problems with this Ramah. First of all, the Ramah seems to indicate that it's only a problem to serve as a Sandek twice for one family member. Meaning, it's only a problem for, let's say you have a person named Chaim, and Chaim wants to be the Sandek twice for Shmuel's family. That's not allowed. However, let's say Chaim wants to be the Sandek twice in his lifetime, one for Shmuel's family, one for a different family. That would be okay. That was written Mefurish in the Pirush Beis Hillel on the Ramah. But that doesn't make any sense, because if you really want to compare it to the way it was done in the Beis HaMikdash, the way it was done in the Beis HaMikdash is, once someone brought Ketores once, he was done for his lifetime. So then if that's the case, then according to the Ramah, once you become a Sandek once in your lifetime, you should never be allowed to do it again. Meaning that if you have a person, a grandfather who served as a Sandek once for one family, he can't be a Sandek ever again. And obviously we don't find that. The Gra disagree with the Ramah because he says Devar ve'in lahem shachar. It doesn't make any sense. Deim kain mekamakam ma'adam echad dafka ve'echel yaseh shtei pam Sandek la'olam, because according to the Ramah that means you can't be a Sandek twice in your lifetime, and that's a problem. The second problem, this is the Gra has noticed, that why couldn't a Kohen perform Ketores twice in his lifetime? So the Gemara explains because bringing Ketores may be very wealthy, and they wanted to spread the wealth. So the Gra says, Lo ra'inu Sandek shemisasher. I never saw a Sandek become wealthy. Meaning you can't really compare it, because in the Beis Hamikdash, when you broke Keteros, you became wealthy. I've never saw a Sandek become wealthy. That's the second problem. On that, the Chassam Sofer says maybe they're not wealthy, but maybe they were supposed to they become really poor, and Hashem prevented that. But that's the second problem. The third problem is the Aruch HaShulchan. The Aruch HaShulchan is a very valid point. By the Beis Hamikdash, who's in charge of the Beis Hamikdash? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, we're going to spread the wealth. But when it comes to, he says right here, first of all, by the way, even by the Beis Hamikdash, it wasn't that a Kohen is not allowed to perform the Ketoros twice. He was allowed to. It's just that we chose to spread the wealth. So, but let's say during the times of the Beis Hamikdash, if all of Klal Yisrael got together and said, we want this Kohen to bring the Ketoros twice, it would seem that would be okay. So go back to our case. This father is in charge of who's performing the Sandek. He wants his father to do it. Why should we stop him? All we see from the Gemara is that there's a concept that they used to spread the wealth by the Beis Hamikdash. But who says that you have to? Maybe by the Beis Hamikdash they did, but who says you have to? And the Noida B'Yehuda in Madur Kamech Yeridayas in Pevav, he also writes, he says, "The Bishlam Ketoras he avoda Masur l'chol b'nei Aaron ish ke'echav." When it comes to Ketoras, all of the Kohanim have the right to serve as to perform the Ketoras. V'im kein kulum shutvim b'davar, and therefore lo hanichu lios echad shona b'pamayim v'chaver lo yiskav b'mitzazu. Because every Kohen had the right to bring the Ketoras, it was only fair that you would take turns. Aval mitzvah Sandek, but who's in charge of choosing the Sandek? When you have a husband and wife who have a baby, who's in charge? They are. The father, whatever, they're in charge. And if they choose to give it to someone, who's stopping them? By the Beis Hamikdash, the right to bring Ketoras belonged to all the Kohanim. So all the Kohanim said the most fair thing is to take turns. But when it comes to it's their business. And if they choose to give it to someone else, then it shouldn't be a problem. That's the problem that many Achronim have, and therefore the Vilna Gaon says, I agree that a person should not be a Sandek twice for one family, but not for the Ramah's reason. The Ramah's reason is based on the Maril because he's comparing it to bringing Ketores. Says the Vilna Gaon, it's a completely much simpler reason. It's based on one of the Tzavos Rav Yehuda HaChassid. I gave a shir on it recently that the Tzavos Rav Yehuda HaChassid was the last will and testament of Rav Yehuda HaChassid, and a lot of Kabbalistic concepts he said not to do. One of them is, he writes in Lamed Hey, Lo Yasel Lechaver Sandek L'Shnei Banav. You should not become a Sandek for two young boys in the same family. Ela Imkein Meis Echad, because Chas V'Shalom it's a dangerous thing for the children, Kabbalistically. So, and by the way, many Mefarshim explain this is a Kabbalistic thing. So the Vilna Gaon says, I agree in Halacha, in principle, that a person should not perform a Sandek for two brothers, but not for the reason of the Ramah. The Ramah was trying to compare it to Ketores. Says the Gra, that's not the reason. It's a Kabbalistic thing. It's the Tzavos Rav Yehuda HaChassid. Now, understanding Tzavos Rav Yehuda HaChassid, the basic understanding is that it's Kabbalistic. However, Moshe Sternbuch in Chilik Beisim and Top Tzadi Beis explains that it's not just Kabbalistic. It's based on Ayin Hara. It's based on Ayin Hara. It looks bad. It's an Ayin Hara for you to be the same Sandek for two brothers. Therefore, he says a grandfather would be allowed to. Based on this reasoning, if it's just Kabbalistic, then one person should not be a Sandek for two brothers. That's just Kabbalistic. But the Moshe Sternbuch is trying to give a rationale behind it, and his rationale is Tzayin Hara. It doesn't look good. People are going to look at you and say, oh, you're the Sandek twice? Again, you're the Sandek. And it's an Ayin Hara. Says the Moshe Sternbuch, however, if you're the grandfather, no one's going to look at the grandfather and say, you're the Sandek again? Of course he's the Sandek. He's the grandfather. And therefore it will be allowed. But again, it would be I'd be scared to take upon this. In addition, if the whole, meaning according to the Vilna Gaon, the whole reason to be machmir is based on the Tzavos Rav Yehuda HaChassid. I can't go into it right now, but many Achronim, including the Noda B'Yehuda and the Shav Yaakov and other Achronim, never were machmer like the tzavos of Yudah Chassid. I gave a shir on it in its own right, but many achronim felt that the tzavos of Yudah Chassid were not meant for public halacha. It was meant for a private halacha. It was meant for his family, and it wasn't meant for public halacha. In which case, so according to the Vilna Gaon, if the whole reason to be machmer is based on the tzavos of Yudah Chassid, if you're makel on the tzavos of Yudah Chassid, I guess you could be makel with this as well. The Neid Behuda says that in Poland the custom was he's trying to disprove this whole thing. This whole reason not to have one person be the Sandek for two brothers. He says, it's not such a big deal because many Rabbanim, many Rebbes were Sandek for the whole family. So clearly, it was never accepted. On that, the Chassam Sofer and Ar Chaim Simikuf Nur Ches, he says, no. It's possible that it's really a problem. And based on the Ramah, we'll go with the Ramah's rationale. And the Ramah's rationale was that it was because it's like Ketores in the Beis HaMikdash, that a Kohen was not allowed to perform the Ketores twice. But says the Chassam Sofer, the Kohen Gadol was always allowed to. The Kohen Gadol was allowed to do it as many times as he wanted. Therefore, a Rav in the town maybe has the status of a Kohen Gadol, in which case it would be allowed. Okay, it's a nice thought. And again, this is all. So whether a Rav or whether a grandfather would be allowed, it would depend. If you understand that, let's pick a Rav. Would a Rav be allowed to be the Sandek for two brothers? So if the reason is according to the Ramah because a Kohen was not allowed to do Ketores twice, on that the Chassam Sofer says, but a Kohen Gadol was allowed, and if this rabbi is a big rabbi, maybe he has the status of a Kohen Gadol. Now if the concern is because of the tzavos of Yudah Chassid, then it depends. If it's just Kabbalistic, then it'll be a problem. If the understanding of the tzavos of Yudah Chassid is like Rav Moshe Sternbuch understood, and that it's based on Maris Ayin, it's Ayin Hara, that it's Ayin Hara for one person to be the Sandek twice, says Rav Moshe Sternbuch, if it's a big rabbi, no one's going to give a big rabbi an Ayin Hara, in which case it will be allowed. So I guess a Rav should be consulted. All questions could be sent to avizakatinsky@gmail.com, avizakutinsky@gmail.com.